Hello everyone, and today I'm going to be starting with my biggest canvas. I've gone out to the store and got some supplies. I've got this canvas roll now. I've got all my art supplies to make one of my biggest paintings that I'm going to start very soon. Now, got this canvas roll and some other art supplies. Let's see. I've got this art gesso, which is this. This is to put a base coat on my canvas. It's the primer, a lot of paints, like a lot of them. Some big brushes because I didn't have any, as I've never done such a big painting. This is about 28 inches in height and then it's 5 meters long. So I'm going to cut it down into like around 71 inches. That is going to be like around this huge. I'm starting by getting the frame ready for the canvas. The frame is customized exactly to the size that I need, and the legs are extended so it works like an easel and makes it easier for me to paint. I'm going to be starting with my biggest canvas. Yes, I'm going to be starting by stapling my canvas on this board. This is my easel where I can paint. I've got my canvas here, so let's get stapling. I'm stretching that canvas out and stapling it onto the frame. I've got some lovely help here from my father. Now I've got this canvas ready. Finally, I'm going to start painting very soon. And I'm going to start by prepping it. This is the gesso that I'm using. It's the primer to prepare a wide range surface. So we usually prep the canvas because it's a rough surface and it just gives a nice smooth layer to it. I'm doing 2 layers of gesso here. That's usually enough to smooth out the surface without making it too thick. I'm not adding more layers because I want the canvas to still breathe and have a little bit of texture. I'm smoothing out the gesso by using a big steel scale. This helps remove those brush marks. I've just finished applying 1 layer of gesso, and in the evening I'll apply the second coat. I'm waiting for it to dry. Now, one mistake I made while applying the coat was, since it was my first time, I didn't have a lot of experience either. So when I was applying it, first of all, I didn't have a much bigger tool to apply it. Like, I used this knife, which is pretty small. Second thing, I applied it first on this side, and before evening it out, I moved to the other. Till I came back over here, this place was dry. So it was very difficult for me to even it out. It has stayed a little rough on this corner over here, but I'll even it out afterwards after I put in the second layer. We also need to sand it after it's done. So I'm gonna wait for it to dry first. Now this first layer has dried completely and it's time to sand it. Today is day 2 and I'm starting with my sketch. This is the reference image that I have found. I'm working on horses. So these are the 3 main subjects that I have chosen. Along with it, the background I'm going to change a little bit as I go forward. I'm drawing the basic grid to understand the center point of the canvas. I'm honestly pretty nervous while starting off because I'm not sure if the sketch will turn out right. It's kind of my first time to make such a big sketch on this huge canvas, and I have done horses before, but not at such a huge scale. Now I'm done with the sketch. I'll take a break for some time and come back and start painting. It's time to start painting. Here I'm using this big flat brush and my acrylic paints. Now I'm going to start by painting the background and then later moving on till the horses, because I want to do the subject the last. And first I'm going to start with the blurred out background, that is the trees. Later I'll move on to the foreground, which is the river. I'm using different shades of greens, browns, yellows here for the forest. First I'll start with the darkest shade and slowly build a gradient. As I move towards the middle, I'm keeping it lighter because that's where the light source is. I'll wind up for today and continue again tomorrow. For the first layer, I'm going to be using a little bit of more water. I realized yesterday while painting that this helps get a smoother gradient. I don't need to apply a thick layer in the first wash because there are still many more layers to come. Here I'm done with the background for the trees. The details in it are still left. This is still the first wash. I'm going to go ahead with the river and add a wash for it first, and then come back to the trees to add more details. I'm also going in and adding the light, middle and dark tones on those rocks. Starting with the second layer on the forest. Now here I'm using a fan brush, and honestly this has saved me a lot of time. It's giving me the best textured background for the trees. It is making it look so realistic. I completely love it. While adding this texture, it's important to understand that the amount of water I use in the paint, because it cannot be too thick or too thin, especially not too thin, because if it's thin, the water drips down and the texture is lost. So it just becomes like a blob of paint. I also go in and test the texture and the intensity of paint on my palette itself before going in on the canvas. I'm trying to add the fog here, but the paint is drying out really quickly and it's not blending the way I want it to. I try to figure out a lot of ways to smudge it, especially in such a large area, but it just keeps on drying out. That is when I go in with my hands a little bit to smudge it. It starts working and I add a little bit more water and go in with smaller sections. That's when it finally starts looking the way I want it to. I'm going to again go in with the fan brush and complete the forest. and I'm starting off with the second layer on the river. I noticed there is still a little bit of detail left in the tree, so I'm just going to go in and finish that off. I'm completely done with the background, and I've also added 2 washes on the river. So I wanted to finish the river first, but I realized that since it has splashes which go on the horses, I cannot do that until I finish the horse. So I'm going to leave that for the end now. I'm starting by adding a light layer on the horse and then go in with the details. I'm starting with the second tone on the horse, beginning from the darkest to the lightest areas. Now, it was getting pretty difficult to get the smoothness that a horse can usually has because it was difficult to blend it in on such a big canvas. The mistake I was also making here was adding the details even before finishing those tones. So I went back and first focused on the darker and the lighter tones, just marking out those areas, and in the later layers I will go in with the details. It's pretty early in the morning, around 5:30 a.m. I wanted to start early because I really like working in the morning. It feels more fresh and the mind is more relaxed. Now I'm starting with the third layer on the horse, going in with the darker values first, then adding the brighter effect from where the light is coming. Here I'm using yellows and ochres. The layer mainly adds more depth, still not going in with too much of detail, but giving the right effect of light.
Two 2,000 years later.
blend in the colors on the horse skin, I'm using two brushes here. One brush is for applying the paint and smoothing it out first, and then I go in with a dry brush, gently rub over it to soften everything and get a smooth transition. This is one trick that is really helping me, and this is not the first time that I'm doing it out here. I keep adding more layers and smoothing them out again and again till it starts looking the best. If you're enjoying watching this process, do give it a like, share and subscribe. Finally, I am done with 2 coats on these horses. The third coat for the middle horse is also done. I am going to go in with the fourth coat after a small break. I am too tired. I've been up since 5 a.m. doing this. And yes, let's take a break and come back. Now in the third layer, I've started adding more tone and bringing in those details. Going in with the legs, I am not adding much of details there because the river is going to cover most of the part, especially the legs which are behind. The ones that are in front, I will go in and add a little bit of detail there. I later move on with using my thinnest brush that I have. In this stage, I'm finally comfortable adding the hair. I'm following a natural direction instead of randomly placing strokes because that really changes how realistic it looks. Switching between smaller brushes depending on how soft or sharp I want those strokes to be. Some really need fine lines, while some are just a thick bunch. Painting the hair is actually one of the most tedious parts. I'm constantly moving from dark to light and then light to dark just to get the gradient within the single stroke. It takes a lot of patience and honestly it gets pretty tiring. I keep stepping back again and again to check if it looks good from a distance, because up close it looks a little messy, but once it's all together, it looks amazing. If you are a beginner and want to learn more about drawing and painting, you can enroll in my online class. I'll leave my contact details in the description. The river has a lot of tones and tints, including blues and browns. There is so much of reflection that is going on. I'm trying to make it look as realistic as possible. Getting that sense of flow and the smoothness in the water is an actual task with acrylics because the plane just doesn't smooth out. Starting with the splashes, there are so many tones in it, in each splash, that I don't know how to go forward with it. Now I'm trying using different brushes. I tried with round, flat, and even my fan brush, even my hands, but it's just not working. It doesn't seem the way that I want it to see. And finally, I got this idea of using a toothbrush. So I didn't know if it would work, but I guess it is working pretty well. I really like how the texture is forming. I like the splashes much better now. So I'm gonna go and give it more final touches. Today is the final day of my painting. I'm gonna just work on splashes, give it some final touches, and I'm gonna be done. Ta-da! I'm finally done with my painting. Thank you for watching my video. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed making it. Hope to see you in the next one.